We ready? Okay, we'll go ahead and begin. Good afternoon. Pleased to be joined by a number of folks from the press, and certainly thrilled to be joined by so many of our colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus here in the great city of Baltimore, the great state of Maryland, with some of our colleagues who hail from this great state. And we're going to have a great conference, and I'm going to let our members of leadership talk a little bit more about the substance of the conference. I simply want to say that focusing on the theme of our conference, United for Opportunity, Democrats from the House are gathering because we think it's important to let the American people know that 2016 will not be a lost year in the House of Representatives or in Congress, that if we have anything to do with it, we're going to get a lot of stuff done with the President of the United States, and we're ready to work with him. We have assembled an array of phenomenal speakers to talk to us about how we get things done, how we move forward with that mantle of leadership, and how we produce, how we deliver for the American people. We have folks like Salman Khan, someone who's renowned in education, an innovative speaker who talks about education in the 21st century. We have Richard Trumka, the president of the AFL-CIO, who will talk to us about working families. We have people like Trevor Noah, who is probably as expert as anyone else in America on politics these days in Washington, D.C., and Tom Tolles, who is the editorial cartoonist of the Washington Post, who is somehow able to, in one picture, say 1,000 words. And we're hoping that he's going to give us a sense of how he's able to bring things down, synthesize things into such a brief way of expressing it to the American people. Any number of people who are going to come speak to us. We're pleased to have him here, but I am thrilled that so many of our House Democrats weathered some real stormy conditions to be here in Baltimore, and we're looking forward to a great time. With that, I want to introduce one of our hosts here in Baltimore, the colleague and friend of all of ours who happens to represent this part of the great state of Maryland, Elijah Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're in Baltimore so grateful that the caucus has come here to Baltimore. There's so many other places they could have gone, thousands of them, but they came to a city that is like many and most other cities in our nation. Back in the spring of this year, we had the death of a young man named Freddie Gray. And I shall never forget that during his funeral, I asked one question. I asked the question, did you see him? Did you see him when he lived? And I'm so glad that when the caucus decided that they wanted to come to a place where they could hold this conference, they decided to come here. We are a city that continues to struggle. Back when we had the disturbances, a lot of people just looked at the question of whether this was a police brutality situation, but it's far greater than that. I've heard Jim Clyburn talk about many times how it's not just that incident, it's all of the underpinning things that go with it. That is joblessness, that is lack of opportunity. Somebody once said that we do not have a lack of talent, we have a lack of opportunity. Not only that, it goes with so much of the abandonment and certain policies that have been made on the national level that have caused our cities to be in difficult circumstances. And so we come here to Baltimore, and this is a great backdrop. And by the way, one of the things that, reason why it means so much to me is that it shows faith in our cities, the fact that we would be here. But we come here united for opportunity. And I want to pause 1 second, and I'm not going to be long, but that united. As we watch the other party say things and do things to turn us against each other, we as a party are determined to work with each other to make a difference. But then there's that other part, the opportunity. There's so many people here in Baltimore that are reaching out. and they are struggling, and they're trying to make it. They're the ones who get up and get the early bus. They're the ones that work the 2 and 3 jobs. They are the ones who are trying to get that child through college, and when the letter comes of acceptance, they have to tear it up and say, we can't afford it. They're the ones. They're the ones that never thought that they'd be getting food stamps. But now they are the ones that are accepting them. And so we have to rebuild our cities, reinvest in our cities, reinvest in people. And so, again, we are so grateful to the caucus for coming to Baltimore. And I know that with this caucus and with the array of speakers that we have, that we will huddle together and march out of here even more united caucus, and we will show the world that we are not so much concerned about who we are fighting against, but what we are fighting for and who we are fighting for. We will be focused on that, who we're fighting for and what we are fighting for. Thank you.
Our leader, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank you and your staff and Mr. Crowley for bringing us together for a very important conference, issues conference at a very important time. You have set the stage for a discussion among members that is not really only an issues work conference. It is a workshop, an exchange of ideas between members and the speakers that you're bringing to us. You did not hear an array of political speakers. You heard people of ideas, people who are entrepreneurs, people who think entrepreneurially for us to have an exchange with. You have set the stage. Mr. Cummings has set the tone. And I thank you, Mr. Cummings, for welcoming us in such a very important way. I, too, for many reasons, am happy that we are delighted that we are in Baltimore. I grew up less than a mile from here. I'm glad my grandchild will be able to once again visit the old neighborhood. Hi, Bella. Don't be shy. And not just because it has been my home for so many years, but also because this is a working class city. This is a city that depends and recognizes the importance of the middle class and the success of the middle class to the success of our economy. That it's not just about the middle class, but those who aspire to it. And so when we talk about what we've come to deal with now, it's united for opportunity. Opportunity has the word unity in it. Opportunity. So that is really important. Community has the word unity in it. And I'm so proud of the unity of the House Democrats. People always ask, how do you keep them all together? Our leadership gets that question all the time. It's not about us keeping together. It's about our values that draw us together and that we share and that we act upon. So this is a very important meeting for us at a very important time in our country as decisions are made as to how many more people can participate in the prosperity of our country, how we address issues in our criminal justice system, how we secure our nation, both national security, homeland security, neighborhood security. The list goes on. Others will address them. I'm just accepting Mr. Cummings' welcome to the city and thank Mr. Becerra and Mr. Crowley for their leadership in putting together such an excellent meeting. With that, I'm pleased to yield to Mr. Hoyer of Maryland, the distinguished House Democratic whip.
I think Mr. Cummings said it all. That doesn't mean the rest of us aren't going to speak, you understand. But he said it all. Who we're fighting for and what we're fighting for. And hopefully we can come together in the Congress, not just united as a party, as you have seen us be for now some 8 years. Longer than that, but certainly from 2007 to today. United on behalf of people, united on behalf of ideas, united on behalf of our country. And that's what this conference is about. Elijah Cummings said that there are too many efforts made to drive people apart rather than bring them together. My own view that the stark difference between the two parties is our underlying premise is we are in this together. For that young man and young woman in your city, and frankly in the rural areas, as Mr. Clyburn points out so well, it's not just the cities. And it is whites as well as blacks, as well as Hispanics, as well as Native Americans, as well as others. We believe that we are in this together. And we believe in many respects philosophically, our Republican colleagues believe that each of us is on our own. No minimum wage, no health care, no rules to protect consumers. The issues that we join at this conference and in the Congress are critically important. And I noted that Mr. Flores, who heads up the Republican Study Committee, urged Speaker Ryan to put bills on the floor. But I also noted, and I think is probably accurate, a story that appeared just today. Lindsay McPherson. Lindsay, are you here? Lindsay wrote this, and what she wrote was, Speaker Ryan wants Republicans to go on offense on ideas, but he is only committed to drafting the playbook, not running the plays. Because running the plays would include showing the American people what the alternative to health care is, what the alternative to comprehensive immigration reform, what the alternative would be to making sure that every American has the right to vote. The issues this year and in this election are extraordinarily important. We are coming here to Baltimore, one of the great cities of our country. I may not be totally objective on that. We have a lot of great cities represented here.
The greatest city. Why, thank you.
And different ideas as to which one is number one. But they're all great cities and a great country, from east to west to north to south. And we believe we're in this together. And we believe that if we're going to be honest with the American people, we're going to put on the floor our ideas to show that their lives can be better. They can have an ability to make it in America. They can have a secure country, a secure neighborhood. And Xavier Becerra, our chairman, and Joe Crowley, our vice chairman, are leading us one more time in coming together so we can be a more effective advocate of the people. Thank you very much. Next is, I've already mentioned him, is my dear friend who has brought so much clarity and focus to the fact that there are people all over this country, not just in the cities, not just in the suburbs, but in the rural areas as well, that we need to embrace to make sure that they can make it in America. Jim Clyburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whip. Thank you for talking about clarity. I'm going to muddy it up a little bit here. I heard you talk about the greatest cities in America. Now, I know that there's all kind of chirping.
Unity.
All kind of chirping here. But so when you have these disagreements like this, you ought to look for, to some third parties for validation. So I'm going to say Condé Nast, Travel Leisure, they all happen to say that the greatest city in America right now is Charleston, South Carolina, that I'm pleased to represent here in the Congress, and where we were 2 weekends ago. And it's kind of interesting, I thought, as Elijah welcomed us to his district, I thought about the President's State of the Union address, which I thought took us to the fundamentals of what the country is all about, which is embodied in our motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And that's what the theme of this conference is all about. Uniting as one, opportunities for all. United as one, creating opportunities for all. I spent my first summer away from South Carolina here in Baltimore. I thought about that, Elijah, as you were talking. When I came to Baltimore that summer to visit my Aunt Louise, who last week turned 96, and I'm going to go out and visit her while we're here. I came to live with her and her family. We were out at Cherry Hill. And I thought that I had really gone to where opportunities would be. I had no idea that Cherry Hill was Baltimore's first attempt at public housing, and I was living in I guess you would call it an assisted, government assistance home. Because I had not had any opportunities outside of the little community that I grew up in. And so I came to the Congress. I came with the thought that whatever I do, I should do it in concert with others to unify our folks and provide opportunities for everybody. So little boys and girls growing up in rural America can have the same opportunities to fulfill their dreams and aspirations that everybody else has. That's what the president was talking about in his State of the Union address. And that's why we're here today, to do what we can to further amplify his enunciations of that evening. With that, I'd like to present our Vice Chair of the Caucus, Mr. Joe Crowley, from the second greatest.
If that's the biggest disagreement we have, it pales in comparison to the disagreements the Republicans have. So I'll take that. Coming from the greatest city the world has ever known, New York City. First, let me thank the chair of our caucus, Xavier Becerra, for this incredible opportunity to come together as Democrats once again and leading our caucus. And it's the last time he will chair, be the chair in terms of our Democratic caucus retreat. He's done an outstanding job in the three prior caucus retreats, and I know this one will be no less inspiring. So thank you, Xavier Becerra, for all your leadership. And more to come on that. I want to thank all the Democratic leadership for being here today in this wonderful, wonderful city, this great city, a city that has meant so much to the development of the United States from its very inception, and has continued throughout history to contribute, as it is today, in terms of the political debate that we're having, and debate, generally speaking, on our civil society. And we thank the city of Baltimore for continuing to contribute in such a meaningful way. I want to thank the president, our great president who now finds himself in his last year of office, for his leadership, to Nancy Pelosi and the entire Democratic leadership, for 70 straight months of private sector job growth, of 14 million new jobs created over the last 8 years, of 18 million people who now have health insurance, who prior to that had no hope for health insurance. They have it today. That's something that Democrats rightfully can take responsibility for. We thank, in particular, Leader Pelosi for her efforts throughout all that to make that come to fruition. But we Democrats recognize challenges as well. Our Democratic caucus has challenges. The city of Baltimore has challenges. Our country has challenges. But with challenges comes opportunity. And we are the party of vision. We recognize that the affordability of college is still too high for the average person to afford. We recognize that that retirement insecurity is becoming a greater and greater crisis in our country. We recognize that gun violence has to end. We recognize that this great city of immigration, Baltimore, what is meant to immigrants throughout our country, that issue still needs to be tackled. These are challenges. We recognize the challenges, but we also know the opportunities that exist for us to meet these challenges head on. because we, the Democratic Party, have been the party of vision. I'm glad to see that maybe some of my Republican colleagues are starting to catch on to that term, but they have lacked any vision for the past 8 years. This Democratic caucus has continued to have a vision of growth, long-term job growth for the American people. And because of that, we will be successful in the upcoming elections. And this week gives us an opportunity to coalesce and to go out even stronger and make the case to the American people as to why we ought to be leading this nation forward. And with that, I will turn it back to the great chair of the Democratic Caucus, Xavier Becerra.
Thanks, Joe. So before we go to questions, I do want to acknowledge that we've been joined by our colleagues in the leadership team, Rosa DeLauro, the co-chair of our Steering and Policy Committee, Ben Ray Lujan, the chair of our Congressional Campaign Committee, and Steve Israel, the chair of our Communications and Policy Committee, who are with us and available to answer questions. And I just want to point out that you probably saw the biggest disagreement that our caucus will face today about which city is the greatest. We did. Los Angeles still stands as the #1 city. And with that, let's take some questions. Yes, let's start across the way. We have to go quickly because we want to start on time. Yes.
Yes, just wondered about the text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership has been out for almost 3 months now. We've had a chance to review it. I wonder if you could tell us about where the caucus stands on it, and given some of the differences that members have had with the president on this issue, have you told him to wait and not try to pass this spring?
No, the members are reviewing the TPP, the substance of it. We will have a workshop, a breakout section, Mr. Chairman, under the leadership of, all members will participate, but Sandy Levin, our ranking member on Ways and Means, the Committee of Jurisdiction, will be conducting that. The President is very eager to have TPP passed this year. What I've said to members is a vote on fast track is one vote. Now you review TPP in its substance and we'll see what the decisions are as members are studying it. I don't know. I have no idea.
Let's go across real quickly and see if we can go through as many questions as possible.
Yeah.
Pelosi, a lot of your Democratic colleagues, including some leaders who are standing up with you, have raised concerns about Bernie Sanders being at the top of the ticket in 2016, saying that it could cause a meltdown in terms of congressional races. Earlier this week, Senator Sanders again stressed he planned to raise taxes to pay for his plan. I'm just wondering, do you support the approach he's taking in that plan, and how concerned are you about the fallout for races, competitive races?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm very proud of all three of our candidates. Of course, Secretary Clinton, Senator Bernie Sanders, and homegrown Martin O'Malley, from Mayor of Baltimore and Governor of Maryland. We need every one of the supporters of all of those candidates to come together in the general election to elect a Democratic president. The fact is that Bernie Sanders is enlarging the universe of people who are paying attention to the election, and we hope that he will bring them to the polls in November to support the Democratic nominee. There are differences of opinion in terms of approach, but every one of our candidates shares what you heard here, concern about all Americans participating in the full prosperity of our country. I think that what Bernie said was, I'm going to reduce the cost of health care, and it may involve some people paying a tax. We're not running on any platform of raising taxes. We do want to have a fairer tax system, and that we hope that we could do that. We hope that we can do that this year. But God bless all of the people who have gotten enthusiastic about all of the Democratic candidates. We expect them to help in the turnout in November, and we hope that all of that will help us win many more seats, perhaps the majority, who knows, in the House and in the Senate.
Very quickly so we can go to...
Well, I mean, he's talking about a single payer, and that's not going to happen. I mean, does anybody in this room think that we're going to be discussing a single payer? I've been for single payer for 30 years. It is a very popular idea in our country, but we have made a decision about where we're going on health care, and it gives me the opportunity to say how proud we are of it, of Obamacare, if you call it that, Affordable Care Act, as we named it in the Congress, because it has, as Mr. Crowley said 18 million more people who have access to quality, affordable health care who would never have who didn't have it before, A. B, that it has contained cost. If there were no other reason to pass a health care bill, if everyone loved their insurance, their insurers, their premiums, their monthly payments, if everybody loved that and the care they received, even then we would still have to pass a bill to reduce the cost. So it has achieved the goal of affordable, quality, accessible health care for many millions more Americans. It is lowering the cost of health care in our country. And in fact, as a supporter of single payer for years before, I made sure that all of us made sure that many of the features that are attractive about single payer, no pre-existing conditions, no lifetime limits, no annual limits. The list goes on and on. So we have, I think, a very realistic plan that is out there. Can it be improved upon? Everything can. But it's no use having a conversation about something that's not going to happen. And again, we're very proud of the Affordable Care Act. And again, years ago, if we had a tabula rasa, would single payer been a route to go? We certainly would consider that. Right now, we're proud of what we have and want to build upon that.
We have time for maybe two quick questions, 1 and 2, and then we'll have to head out.
So first, I want to assure you, the New York Times news staff takes no position you would
They should.
Oh, well,
They
wait a minute. Last night at dinner, we had Denver, and we had, I'm surprised he didn't bring it up. He told me, I said, to the South Carolinians supporting the North Carolinians, says, we're all Carolinians.
Yes.
That's what he said last night. I was preferring to talk about the Golden State Warriors. That's what I wanted to talk about. So what we did discuss was, though, how sports is such a unifying factor in our communities. All other differences go by the by when we talk sports.
on politics. Leslie, 10 years ago, in 2006, you won a robust majority. There was nobody named Barack Obama on the ticket that year. 10 years later, we find House Democrats, including the party, facing a very tough cycle by any measure. Has this, notwithstanding the policy achievements of the first 2 years of President Obama's first term in office, has he done enough for you and your members politically? How have you ended up in this situation so deeply in the minority, despite all the successes that you...
Well, I'm going to call upon my colleagues to weigh in, but I want to say this. I want to remind that our achievements were great under President Obama. We also had great achievements under President George W. Bush because we respected the office of president. We worked with it, but we disagreed when he wanted to privatize Social Security. We disagreed, many of us, on the war in Iraq. But where we could find common ground, we sought it. We passed the biggest energy bill in the history of our country, did so much for HIV and AIDS. Barney Frank said we passed one of the most progressive bills on low-income tax credit with President Bush. The list goes on, and many of the accomplishments we had with President Bush. With President Obama, of course, we had a vision. We had some ideas that had been unfulfilled for a while, and we were able, and so did he, and we were able to come together in unity to pass this legislation. It's all worth it. It was fabulous. And much of what he is doing now is predicated on what we passed then. We take pride in President Barack Obama. I think he's a great president for what we have accomplished for the American people. What happens politically is another thing.
Because I
Yeah.
want to start our conference on time. We have one last
Mr.
question.
As
and
our
then
chairman of
maybe some of our
DCCC, want to
Let
speak
me
to that?
make sure on this last question, if anyone wants to add anything, we can, but otherwise we're going to start our conference
Our
late.
DCCC chairman wants to say.
But at the end, I can have
Oh,
you
at
go,
the
but
end.
I want to
Oh,
make
at
sure
the
that we get to the last question, otherwise we're going to be here after 2:30. Go right ahead.
Just for, again, for Leader Pelosi, you met with President Obama yesterday, and he issued a statement afterwards talking about all the bipartisan things he wants to do in his final year in office, and something like appropriations, fighting opioid addiction, criminal justice reform. These are all sorts of things that are in Speaker Ryan's playbook and Senator McConnell's playbook. Are you at all worried that this legacy building that he wants to do in his final year may take away from your efforts to sort of draw a greater contrast to the Republicans?
No, and I'm going to yield to Steny on this, but I would add to that the AUMF, we talked about trying to work together in that way. The president did emphasize what we could do in a bipartisan way. That was our purpose in going to the meeting, to accomplish something for the American people. We have plenty of place to differentiate. Mr. Hoyer named some of it, Mr. Crowley, others have named it as well. And because our chairman is holding us to a time limit, I will just I will just close by saying, when you said yesterday you met with the President of the United States, it just hit me in a way. And I'm saying, you know, I said earlier I grew up less than a mile from here in Baltimore, Maryland, in Little Italy, and that you were saying you were visited with the President yesterday, having this experience and that experience yesterday is almost an emotional one for me. We lived there my whole life. My parents died there, and it's a working class neighborhood. People thought when my father became mayor we would move. They thought after he was mayor, well, he was mayor when I was in first grade, and when I went to college he was still mayor. When I was born he represented this district, Elijah, in Congress, and just to see the everyday needs of people. That's why we loved there. We loved our neighbors, but it was important also to have constant daily reminders that we had a responsibility to meet the needs of people, and that public service was a noble calling. And so if our calling is to work in a bipartisan way to get something accomplished for the American people, that's a higher priority. Politics is another piece of it. We have big distinctions. Mr. Hoyer is going to speak to them.
Well, I'll be brief because the chairman wants to get this started on time. I referenced the speaker talks in visionary terms of what he wants to do. I applaud him for that. But as I quoted, having a playbook is not the same thing as having plays, as accomplishing objectives. And I do not, Andy, believe that it is mutually exclusive that we can come together on areas of agreement. And we think we ought to have an agreement. We ought to have the immigration system is broken. We ought to be able to work together on a comprehensive immigration reform. I know that's difficult on their side of the aisle. But I think there are the votes, just as I thought there were the votes for the Export-Import Bank on the floor. We came together and gave us a path forward on the appropriations process and on funding of government. Not what we wanted, but it was a compromise. We came together on an education bill, important. Not exactly what we wanted, not exactly what they wanted, but a step forward. So we have shown that we can work in a bipartisan fashion, but that does not preclude us from urging our Republican colleagues to put on the table their proposals. 62 times repealing the Affordable Care Act is not sufficient. They need to show what they want to replace it with and let the American public understand the consequences of their proposals. It's not just enough to have a playbook. So I think we can do both. Where we can work together in a bipartisan way, voting rights, we think Mr. Cantor, before he left, indicated that we need to do something on the Voting Rights Act. I think we can get the votes on the floor for that if it gets to the floor, just as the Export-Import Bank. So we can do both. We ought not to put 2016 on hold in the Congress of the United States. The American public expect and deserve better.
And let's see if Mr. Israel and Ms. Deloro also want to say some remarks before we go ahead and break.
And just to heed Mr. Becerra's call for the 2:30 start, I would say, yes, the president has worked hard, and he's helping out again this cycle in a very aggressive manner. But as we look to 2016, I think there's a lot more attention on Donald Trump and Ted Cruz with what's happening with this division and where the damage has been done, with where Donald Trump and Ted Cruz have taken this debate and this argument as well. So as we look forward to what the battlefield lays out, now into 2016, there's more opportunities day by day. And we're going to get ready for whatever comes in 2016. And President Barack Obama will be there to help to make sure that we elect more Democrats across America.
Rose? You sure? Steve? With that, then, we will close. Thank you all very much. We'll stay in touch. There is a reception at 5:30 for those who are interested with members and the press. Thank you.
Meredith, make sure we get a chance to chat with David some more. We can walk